Welcome to the latest episode of First Word in Sport. Monday morning. How are you, James?
Very good, Luke. And yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. A few teething issues with internet, Sky over the weekend. Never great, but there we go. Obviously, we had a pretty great weekend of sport on a few different levels. Let's start with FA Cup. I think we had what you could say was arguably the biggest FA Cup shock of all time, with Macclesfield taking out the holders Crystal Palace 2-1. I think it was 117 places between these two teams. Macclesfield were the lowest team left in the competition. Did you get to see any of it?
I got to see the last 20 minutes when I got messages saying it was 2-0 to Macclesfield. I didn't really have much of the FA Cup this weekend. I'm not really interested in it, to be honest. But yeah, that's an amazing result. I saw the team that Glasner picked. He picked Mark Gay again, picked Adam Wharton again. Obviously, chucked in a few kids as well. But that's an absolute shocker for Crystal Palace. It really is. That's an embarrassment. It's as you say, it's the biggest cup upset ever. And for Macclesfield as well, that's brilliant in terms of where they were. They're out of administration, 9 years ago? So it's not even the same club. So
they were reformed, I think, 6 years ago, starting in 9th division.
And the manager, John Rooney, is obviously one of the Wayne Rooney's brothers. I think when it were 2-1, when Jeremy Pino scored that brilliant free kick, actually, I thought, here we go. You're going to get an equaliser and they're winning in extra time because of their high levels of fitness, etc. But they didn't. They held on. Pitch invasion didn't cause any issues, which is a big bugbear of mine, but I'll allow that to happen. I did see interesting at the end of the game with Mark Gay having to go over to Crystal Palace fans and explain the performance of some of his fellow teammates, because a couple of them didn't even bother trying by the looks of it, and reading a couple of the Palace forums, etc., over the weekend about it. They are not happy, to say the least.
Well, I've said on this podcast, I am very much of the belief that Crystal Palace squad is absolutely goosed. Glasner has no one to blame but himself. He has picked incredibly strong teams week in, week out. And, you saw that with the likes of Wharton playing here. They don't have a hugely deep squad. And I think this is just an accumulation of that. What we've seen in recent weeks, they look tired. It's one of the big red flags I would have about Glasner in terms of a big job. I think he's taking a very short-term approach to this Palace job now. He doesn't really care about what happens later in the season. He just wants instant gratification. And I think the other thing we actually saw was the limitations of Glasner as a manager when his team has to be on the offensive, not able just to sit back and hit teams on the counter-attack. This wasn't a cup upset where one team had 35 shots and the other one had 2. Palace created absolutely nothing, relatively. They couldn't break them down. And we see this in the Premier League all the time, is that when teams sit deep, they're so hard to break down. And Palace only have one way of playing, and it's to sit deep and just hit teams in transitions. And, give Palace possession, and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, it's a big red flag in Glasner. I mean, it's a shock. That's all you can say. But happy days for Macclesfield. And you also hope now that Macclesfield get another big game financially for their coffers kind of thing. Another game on TV, which would be an absolute right result. But yeah, fair play to them. That's a brilliant result. The magic of the FA Cup keeps it going for the media.
I think there was so much stuff around that game in terms of, obviously, they lost the young lad, Ethan McLeod, a car crash in December, which is just shocking. There's so many emotional things around that game. And I think, as you said, it is the magic of the FA Cup. I know you're a skeptic. as a Liverpool fan, you're obviously used to winning too many things that the FA Cup doesn't matter anymore. It's priority number 4 or 5, but it was great to see, I have to say. It does restore a little bit of faith in football, I think. There were other pretty interesting games. Obviously, Wrexham Forest. I mean, we've talked about Forest on here. Yes, they got the win against West Ham, but Dyche ball is not something that looks like it's going to be lasting a particularly long time. They continue to be dreadful.
Yeah, 3-3, where Wrexham were 3-1 down, weren't they? And lost on pens 4-3 Friday night. Yeah, we talked about it. They've got some really good players there, but he just doesn't seem to be getting anything out of their true ability there. He'll hang on to the end of the season. I think they've got enough quality. They won't go down. I think West Ham, we know, are down, along with Burnley and Wolves. I can't see him being there in the summer. They'll change again in the summer. We've got too much quality in that team.
I mean, you only had to look at the goal from the equaliser from Hudson-Odoi. Brilliant. If you haven't seen it, check it out.
There's some really good goals in the FA Cup this weekend, actually. Some proper... Like Danny Welbeck yesterday. He scored a really good goal again at the age of 35, defining his age. Yeah, but one thing on the FA Cup I would say, I found it weird that ITV, or was it BBC and BT Sport, had the Macclesfield versus Palace game. And then yesterday, there was no games on domestic TV whatsoever. They're all on TNT. It's like a Sunday. There's no other Premier League obviously going on. There's no Championship going on. There's no game on domestic UK TV. Just ridiculous. It's bad scheduling by whoever makes that decision.
It is a bit weird. I mean, you want these stories, you want that match, you want these matches to be on, available to the widest audience.
Yeah, exactly.
That was that game. Obviously, Everton, Sunderland. I'm sure you took no joy in Everton losing on penalties. Can I just say, I mean, we'll touch on penalties a little bit later, but the penalty that Everton got to equalise in the 89th minute of that game against Sunderland.
Where's VAR? On that point, there's no VAR until the 5th round of the FA Cup. And then it's only going to be applied to games that obviously played at the Premier League ground, because they only have the technology for it. Yeah, that was never a penalty in a million years. He just a shoulder barge it, play on, get on with it. Garner scores.
It wasn't even a shoulder barge, was it? He just fell in a hit.
I don't know what it was. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. Sunderland should have won that easily in normal time, apparently. I did watch the penalties. Just because Jordan Pickford thinks he's the best penalty shot stopper ever lived. He's not. You're just not very good, mate. And then those penalties by Everton are just it's hilarious. I just don't understand this business of strolling up and trying to place it in the. Just do what Sunderland players did. Just literally foot through the ball and smack it. Luke O'Nine's penalty at the end, well, the third penalty, just brilliant. Just gives Pickford absolutely no chance. Smacks it as hard as he can do, and it's gone past Pickford as soon as he's moved. So yeah, 9,000 Mackhams, and then the boos at the Hill Dickinson Stadium again. 31 years and counting, lads.
Yeah, Everton are interesting at the moment because they are obviously missing a lot of players in terms of your Grealish years, and they had also said Keane out. They had Ndie, Guille. They're missing a lot of players. But I think what's interesting is their squad depth is really poor. And even the likes of Dibbling, who they spent fortunes on, best part of 40 million, has looked absolute garbage since he's come in. I suspect that might be a signing they regret. I mean, there were a lot of red flags around him in terms of being homesick in previous clubs and that sort of stuff. And and it doesn't look like he's settled in at all at Everton. The problem for your Evertons of the world is you can't afford to be spending £40 million on players and get it wrong. So it will be interesting to see how that sort of plays out.
Did you see the Everton Twitter handle?
Yes.
For anyone who's not seen it, it's obviously been deleted now, but the Everton Twitter handle, the person who was controlling it retweeted something about Dibbling saying, "Why do we sign him?" or something like that. It's going around on the socials anyway, but yeah. He looked really good at Southampton, to be fair to Dibbling, but he's only 19. And he's a good player when you watch him play. But yeah, it could be. It's a big move for a 19-year-old kid from home comforts on the south coast up to Merseyside when you're probably living in a hotel for the best part of 5-6 months. You're not playing at all anyway. You're not playing in the Premier League because you can't get a game. And then when you do come in, no wonder you look rusty because you're just not playing football. And we talked about it. Under 21 football is just not. He's way above that level, yeah. So, but yeah, £40 million a lot. But I still think he'll succeed. Maybe take him as a year, 18 months. But they've got to start playing him, but they won't.
He certainly did very well last year. I mean, clearly very talented. We had Newcastle Bournemouth, another 3-3 after extra time. Newcastle won 7-6 on penalties. A pretty crazy game. I do want to pick on one player here, and it is Petrovic at Bournemouth. Is the equalised. So Newcastle basically equalised. Got a penalty in the 95th minute of that game to equalise the game. Petrovic has come out, brought the player down. I think it was Tonali. And Bruno's obviously scored the penalty. Gordon scored the penalty. And I've not seen less courageous goalkeeping almost ever than Petrovic. He was absolutely petrified of getting hurt. It was so cowardly. It has to be seen to be believed. You're in the 95th minute away at St James's Park, and you do that.
He's rubbish. We said on this pod a couple of months ago that he's absolutely rubbish. Look at the game against Man United. Terrible goalkeeper. The drop down from Kepa to him has been a big thing. I know there's 3 or 4 defenders as well, Bournemouth. But yeah, Harvey Barnes getting 2 more goals. Gordon padding his stats again, getting a penalty. That's all he's good at the moment is Anthony Gordon, taking penalties. Because he's not as good as Harvey Barnes at the moment.
Harvey Barnes is interesting in that he just keeps scoring.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what they do midweek tomorrow night against Man City, who they play. Do they play Barnes or Gordon?
I think they'll play both. Barnes will play on the right.
Ahead of Murphy?
I think so. Murphy's done nothing recently. Murphy had a very good patch early on in the season. Yeah. But so I think it's more a case of, is it Murphy or Gordon? And I think he'll go with Gordon. So I don't think you cannot play Barnes at the moment, given one of the more interesting questions is whether they play Walter Marde or Wissa up front.
Yeah, because they both started, didn't they? Because kind of in that game where you could start see if they could play together. Just because if they lose, they lose. It's not really a massive game for Newcastle, kind of thing.
But we'll come on to Carabao Cup a little bit later. But good win for Newcastle in the end. They're obviously riding their luck a little bit at the moment with all these late equalisers and winners. One of your favourite ones, James, Manchester United against Brighton. Now, Brighton have won 2-1. I do want to preface this by saying I was surprised at how many changes Brighton made to the lineup. It was that much weaker than I was expecting. I'd spent quite a lot of time looking into it, as I do every game. And I was surprised at how weak, particularly given Hertzler's comments as well from press conferences and things like that. For him to start players like Van Hecke and Dunk on the bench, obviously Steele's coming in goal, Ayari's on the bench. It was unbelievable, really. he just didn't. I'm not going to say he didn't care about this competition, but he certainly not a priority.
I think I text you saying, is it that they've promised players that you do play in cup games? They left Minter at home. Belieber didn't even travel, did he either? It's just genuinely hilarious how far and how low Man United have fallen. It's brilliant as a Liverpool fan. I mean, mentioned Welbeck scored a great goal to go 2-0 up. And then just after United made the change and put Bordeaux into midfield, then the young lad obviously gets sent off. And I saw a couple of people saying, we shouldn't have sent him off. It's just chuck the ball away on their booking. What do you expect? Just, he feels a bit sorry for that. But yeah, they get back into Chesko. Jason Steele's just as bad as Petrovic, by the way. He's a garbage goalkeeper. And then, United are out.
Classic backup.
Yeah. It took Hussler long enough last season to realise that he wasn't as good as Van Bruggen kind of thing. But anyway, Brighton win 2-1. United season's over on the 11th of January. First time since 1981-82 season they've gone out in both cups at the first round or the first opportunity they're playing. They obviously lost to Grimsby in August on penalties when Ruben didn't even watch penalties, and their £80 million striker took the 11th penalty in Tesco.
Don't forget in that Grimsby game, they were incredibly fortunate to get it 2 penalties. Maguire scored very late on to even get it 2 penalties.
Yeah, so it's their first season when they only play 40 games since 1914-15. Just have a think about that. It's 40 games. That's going to be 20 less games than probably Man City and Arsenal play this season minimum. It's hilarious. Brighton's 4th win out of the last 5 at Old Trafford as well. Yeah, they are a mess, Man United. I think I said to you as well, they need a complete restructure. The whole club needs changing. It looks like they're going to appoint Michael Carrick as the interim manager, replacing the current interim manager, Darren Fletcher, until the end of the season. I'm amazed that clubs go to former players. I really am. I don't get it. It's a completely different skill set. And Michael Carrick is so underqualified for this Man United job. It's scary. And what happens, by the way, if by whatever miracle he gets some 4th or 5th, right? It won't happen, but stranger things have happened in football. Leicester won the Premier League. What happens then? Do they go to him like what happened under Solskjaer all those years ago and goes, well, you can have a 3-year contract? He's so underqualified. The only reason he's getting it is because he's a former player. Being a player and a manager are 2 totally different things. It's complete nonsense that he's been given a role.
But James, he understands the DNA of Manchester United.
And the DNA of Manchester United is quite entertaining, talking of it, whatever that is. So he'll come in and play 4-2-3-1, whilst for the last 15 months, they've been building a squad to play 3-4-3 under Amron. They sold their 2 left wingers in Rashford and Garnacho. They played Dorgu left back yesterday. So at the moment, they don't have a left winger. They've also got 2 right wingers or 2 right-sided forwards in Bremo and Diallo, who are now back from AFCON because their countries got knocked out over the weekend. They're going to play Sesko up front. They're going to play Bruno behind him. So you're going to leave out one of your other players in Bremo or Cunha or Diallo.
No. Bruno will go back into midfield, right? He has to because they have so few options in there. Bruno's best position is in that 10 position. But because they have Mount and Cunha and everyone else, he will have to drop back into midfield and play as more of an 8, which is he's just not suited to it. He's a brilliant player, but that's not his best position.
No, it's not. It's a 10. So they don't have their whole squad is just complete, and it's a mess completely. And they need to reset completely. They need to take a 4 or 5 year thing and say, right, we need to get rid of all the dead wood we've got in this club. Because at the moment, they're just going from one manager to another manager, jumping around every 18 months, 2 years. chucking a load of money and not having any sort of structure. And the two lads running the day-to-day operations are so far out of their depths, it's scary. And Ineos needs to wake up. Otherwise, you could see them getting relegated at some point. It wouldn't be in the next couple of years. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
I think one of the interesting things to me about their squad building, I mean, I've touched on how illogical some of their squad building has been. And I think the problem they have with doing what you suggest in terms of starting again almost is that they've spent so much money on the likes of Mbeumo, Cunha in this last window. These aren't players for the future. These are players for now. They're in their prime now. These are guys who are, 26 years old? You know, they're not going to be around in 3-4 years' time. You know, the problem is they're almost in a win now sort of situation, but they obviously don't, you know, same with Bruno. Bruno wouldn't be around in 2-3 years' time. Yeah, they're just not built at the moment for a situation to start again, I don't think. It's just a complete shambles.
Yeah, it's no club of that stature had ever fallen that far, really. I mean, generally, not this season, but if they continue, they could get relegated. Like it could be into a relegation battle. Not this season, obviously.
I think the only way they'd ever get truly into trouble and that type of thing would be if they suddenly find themselves with PSR type issues. Obviously, it's changed for next year. But if there's a situation where they're suddenly not able to spend 150, 200 million every summer, whilst that's the case, I think they're always going to have enough, to be honest. You know, they're bringing in 3 or 4 good players. You know, Cunha obviously was poor yesterday, but, you know, he's a good player. And Mbeumo, good player. You know, these aren't bad. You know, Sesko's beginning to show something. It's amazing what a little bit of confidence does. You know, these aren't bad players. You can't, I mean, it's amazing how many bad signings they've had over the years, and they're still able to, get away with it in a way that other teams can't.
Yeah, I mean, that would be if it had financial issues. But another year out of the Champions League, another year out of the, Europa League's irrelevant. You don't get much money.
But what they almost wouldn't want would be Conference League or something like that, where you have all those extra matches and then it has a knock-on effect next year to your Premier League and everything else.
Yeah, playing Thursday, Sunday, yeah.
Because that's the thing about this season with them is that, you know, obviously I was advocating that Amarin wasn't the right answer, but we've also said since, you know, unless you have a plan as to who would replace him, then he wasn't that bad relatively. You know, he's a better manager than Fletcher, Carrick, any of these clowns.
Every day of the week is, proven.
And so obviously with no European football is, you know, they should have less injuries. They should be fresher, and they should be, you know, they should be challenging for those top 4 or 5 places. But it does feel like it's going to be a struggle for them.
They ain't finishing top 4 or 5. They'll be lucky to finish top half. It's an improvement of last year.
So one interesting game was Charlton-Chelsea. Obviously, Chelsea won 5-1. It was interesting in as much as that's Rosenior's first game. What intrigued me as much as anything was lineups. Obviously, this isn't his first choice lineup, but I think what we can actually see is, by looking at the lineup he put out, is what sort of lineup he'll go with this week, actually, in the Carabao Cup game against Arsenal. So I think there's quite a few clues given there as to, you know, none of the front 4, for example, will start against Arsenal, I don't think. I think he likes the Caicedo-Santos partnership in midfield, which then means either Gusto, unless Cucurella's out, a left back, you know, Gusto can play there. But I think you're looking at one of Gusto or James at right back. I think you're looking at Chalobah and Fofana in the middle at the back. So not that many changes to what we've seen from Maresca, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we talked about it on Friday. The build-up will be different. They'll have that double pivot, Caicedo and Santos, who he trusts, obviously, because he knows him from Strasbourg, Santos. When Maresca would use the other right back to come into midfield. So they'll keep those two and try and stop teams on transition when you've got those two, Caicedo and Santos. So you don't ask Caicedo to do all the legwork and get annoyed. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see 5-1 at Charlton. I mean, great. It's like Arsenal winning 4-1 at Portsmouth, and it funny how these things in football happen, isn't it? That Martinelli, who shouldn't been allowed to play yesterday because should have been banned, scored a hat-trick, 2 from corners.
2?
Set piece football.
Arsenal scored 3 from corners yesterday, James.
Yeah, but he scored 2 from corners, didn't he, himself? Scored 2, whatever, like that. How many goals is that from corners now from Stoke City Football Club, is it?
I believe that is 22 goals in all competitions this season by Arsenal from set pieces, not including penalties, by the way.
Not including penalties either.
It's incredible. I mean, fair play. I mean, look, if you have a strength, take advantage of it.
I think Liverpool showed a blueprint on Thursday night how to stop Arsenal play even more, and that sit on Zubimendi completely and stop that passing coming from Gabriel and Saliba, whoever plays centre-back, actually, to stop them getting the ball into Zubimendi. Allow him to dictate pace.
Right, let's talk your FA Cup winners, Aston Villa. Had the easy trip to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Pretty good win for Villa, actually. They went slightly stronger than I thought they might. Having a week off before next game always helps. Very dominant in that first half. Odegaard pulled one back to make it interesting. Spurs looked like they could have potentially got something, but Villa game sort of shifted, and Villa looked as likely to get another one as Spurs did an equaliser. Again, Spurs, I don't know. I mean, we've talked about this for weeks. I mean, I feel like just repeating the same story with Frank. He just feels out of his depth. I think the difference now is I'm not sure the players believe in what he's trying to coach them. I don't believe that, I touched on the fan base being lost on him, a few weeks ago, and it's just accelerating now. He's going to do incredibly well to make it through the transfer window, to be honest.
You think it'll be that close, do you reckon?
Well, I mean, obviously what you have the situation that you have with Amorim, and I suspect it's the same issue as Slot, is you may only get rid of him if you think something else better is available. But things are becoming so toxic with Frank. So it's slightly different to, say, an Amorim and Maresca, where the toxicity wasn't there from the fan base. The toxicity is there with these Tottenham fans at the moment towards Frank. They have had enough. And, it might be in the best interest of Tottenham don't have huge amounts to play for now, really. They're not going to win the Champions League. And are they just going to drift down the league under Frank? If they were to get someone in, those top 5 places are still within touching distance if you put a run together.
Yeah.
But under Frank, it just feels so unlikely that, he'd be able to turn it around with this group of players to get there. I mean,
just have a look at their fixture list, their next set of fixtures. So they've got West Ham on Saturday afternoon, which they dare not lose. Then they've got Dortmund at home Champions League. Away at Burnley. I mean, if they lost away at Burnley, they wouldn't survive enough journey home. They're away at Frankfurt, and they're poor anyway, Frankfurt. Then they're at home to Man City on the 1st of February. Away to Man United on the 7th. And then at home to Newcastle on the 10th of February. So, I mean, if they lose at home to West Ham, he won't survive even, surely.
Well, I think where he's been quite lucky is he's got results to keep him in a job at various times. So he keeps pulling out a win here and there just to keep the pressure off. I think we're beyond that now, and I don't think it really matters what happens with these fixtures. I struggle to see him turning it around. Although one thing I would say in terms of football fans, and they're a pretty special bunch at the best of times, but the number of obviously Polina was involved in a few incidents with Villa, not least the fact that he should have been booked after 5 minutes, clear yellow card, took Kamara out of the game, and it matters later on.
Is that one that referee won't book a player because it's 5 minutes into a game, it's live on TV, BBC or whatever it was on, don't want to book, let the game flow, all this. Doesn't matter if it's the first minute or the 95th minute, a booking is a booking and it influences the game.
We've talked about it before, but it is crazy. But what was interesting, obviously Polina got stuck in, a few tackles flying around, and to see loads of Spurs fans commenting on it, saying, "Oh, we should sign him on a permanent deal," because obviously they only have him on loan at the moment. It just sort of highlights everything that's wrong with football fans, I think, in terms of Polina has been, yes, in this one game he was flying around putting tackles in and showed like he was actually putting the effort in. But he is one of the big problems that Spurs have in terms of that central midfield. He offers absolutely nothing with the ball at his feet. He's very good at breaking up play, but in the modern day Premier League, you need more than that. And signing someone like Polina should be very low down on the list of priorities for Spurs.
Yeah, a lot of fans like that tackle hard man attitude, don't they? Still, it's just it's 2026, lads. It's not 1986 football.
I mean, obviously, a lot of their angst is being directed at Lange, who used to be at Villa, Johan Lange, in terms of the signings or lack of. But what amuses me a little bit is Spurs spent plenty of money in the summer. It's not a lack of spending money. It's just a lack of being able to, obviously they've been unlucky with injuries, but it's a lack of being able to get the players you have to actually perform.
It's bad signing. And haven't they just lost their sporting director? He's going back to Italy, isn't he? After his ban.
Petrucci's off, yeah.
After 4 months back, he's off back to Italy. Yeah.
I don't blame him. I wouldn't want to be on that sinking ship.
Yeah. Got a nice new shiny stadium though, haven't they?
Have you seen their record at that stadium? I think they've lost. It's something like in 175 games, they've now lost 52 home games.
Jesus.
it's horrendous. So elsewhere, we had some easy wins for the likes of Wolves scored 6 against Shrewsbury. Burnley scored 5. It's always interesting when you get these teams struggling in the Premier League, absolutely smashing these smaller teams. And then I think the final game we'll comment on is I don't even know where to begin with this. So Manchester City 10, Exeter 1. Please, Pep Guardiola, do not come and bleat about injuries or player fatigue when you start Rodri and Haaland in this particular game. They both played 45 minutes. You gave full game time to the likes of Reinders, Cherky. Obviously, even the likes of Doku came on as well. And, so many other players who feature prominently every week for them played a huge part in this game. And you're not trusting your youngsters. It just beggars belief.
Yeah, even Semenyo played, he scored, but he just travelled up a couple of days before. So, I mean, it's just recipe for disaster for injuries when these players probably are in the red zone regarding the amount of minutes they've already played this season. And you don't need to play them. I agree with you. They're just,
Why is Rodri playing in that game?
No idea. Haaland shouldn't be playing in that game at all. Can you imagine if he got an injury in that game? Did his hamstring out for 6 weeks?
Oh, look, you can
Or
have
even worse.
you can have Haaland on the bench, let's say, right, as an emergency.
Don't need him on the bench.
It shouldn't be needed, right? But let's just say in an emergency. But there's no way that Haaland should have been playing any minutes in that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I think that's enough. So in terms of FA Cup, obviously, I think everyone is hoping that Barnsley knock Liverpool out tonight. The fourth round draw takes place before that game. So it'd be interesting to see what sort of team you put out tonight.
Yeah, I thought they put out a weaker side, but it sounds like Slott's going to play a couple of the senior pros as well. Obviously, Chiesa will play, Engamara will play, Gomez will play, Mamardashvili will play, and Robertson. So, Nioni, yeah, they should beat Conor Hunaran's Barnsley. The draw's obviously before, so the game's 7:45. So imagine the draw's what, 6:30, 7 o'clock. I think Gerrard and Joe Cole are doing it.
It's just
I'm not out. So it is, yeah. If you get another couple of all Premier League ties, it'll be interesting to see. As a Liverpool fan, I want to play Arsenal at home for one person only.
Ooh. I'm just glad we're not playing Man United again. Let's talk. There was a bit of other football. Obviously, you had Barca Real Madrid Super Cup. What was it taking place in Saudi?
Yeah, second year in a row in Saudi. So they play in a semi-final on Thursday night. Both teams, obviously, then they get into the final. It means a big deal to them. Brilliant game of football. 2-2 at half-time. Rafinha scored a brilliant goal. Then Vinicius Jr. scored his first goal since October with another really good goal. And then Lewandowski scored. And then 2 seconds later, Real Madrid equalised. And then so 2-2 at half-time. Proper game of football. Two different styles. Obviously, Madrid trying to counter, sit back in, trying to counter Barcelona with Vinicius on the left-hand side because Mbappe's not fully fit. Mbappe came on in the second half only with 15, 20 minutes to go. But Rafinha scored a lucky goal to win it 3-2 in the 65th minute or something like that. He's turned himself into a fantastic footballer. He really has. He's brilliant. An old school left winger playing left wing. Brilliant. He scored so many goals last season. He's been really good at Barcelona.
It's just a shame he can't get in all the team of the years, James, ahead of Cole Palmer.
Yeah, I mean, next I'll hear that Arsenal fans, Saka's better than him when he scored 10 goals in 2 Premier League seasons. But anyway, Frankie de Jong gets sent off, which on a tackle on Mbappe, it's not a red card, but, it's just not a red card in the 90th minute. And then Real Madrid had 2 really good chances to equalise. First was about a minute to go. I think it's Fran Garcia just side foots it straight at the goalkeeper. And then they get a corner and head it straight at Garcia, the keeper, Barcelona keeper again. It does amaze me sometimes how often the ball goes into centre of goal where the goalkeeper is from a chance that it's a big chance kind of thing. But yeah, Barcelona 1-3-2 celebrated and Mbappe and that lot were not happy at all. They refused to give a guard of honour and all this business. It was quite entertaining. But yeah, another takeaway from that, by the way, is they had a cooling break, right, in both halves on the 28th minute or something like this. It was 14 degrees in Saudi, 3 hours ahead of UK time. So the game kicked off at 10 o'clock local time. So it's not a cooling break, it's just an advert break kind of thing. So they give it 2 minutes and then they give the obligatory 1 minute for the first half. So it's 3 minutes. And it goes on to about 4 minutes 20 again because no one has any idea, apart from the referee, how long it is after they put the board up. It's beginning to really annoy me, not having a shot clock in football. It's just so easy to do. Almost just every time the ball goes out of play, put the big clock on the screens and to stop the clock. Because yeah, you just don't know. It's a lottery how much time you got left in injury time after injury time.
I mean, it would certainly cut out all the time wasting nonsense.
Yeah, and it probably would have stopped Martinelli doing what he did to Bradley on Thursday night. Which, by the way, I'm not going on about it anymore. It's wound me up enough.
Go on, James.
But anyway, more football anyway. The Scott McTominay still trying to get the Ballon d'Or nominee for this year. Another 2 goals for Napoli away at Inter. So Inter 3 points clear there in Italy, ahead of AC Milan, who are a point clear of Napoli. A dodgy VAR decision penalty for Inter, by the way. I mean, so it doesn't just happen in the Premier League. Conte went absolutely ballistic, which was quite entertaining. Got himself sent off. But McTominay scored again, so he got the 2 goals for Napoli, 2-2. Up in Scotland, Hearts won with 10 men, 1-0. Rangers won. And Celtic won 4-0 under O'Neill. I mean, are they just going to wipe those records off? So what? Hearts are still 3 points clear, aren't they? And in Germany, we had another good result for Munich. It's padding more stats. 8-1 winners over Wolfsburg, 11 points clear. The only takeaway from that is Harry Kane only got 1.
Have you seen the goal difference in the Bundesliga? I'm not sure what it is. It's something that's either mid-40s or 50. It's something. Well, the next highest is 11 or something. They've only played 18 games or something. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And then you see this great Bayern Munich team come and get played off the park by Arsenal.
Yeah. One play, Michael Olise scored 2 goals. I wonder where he goes in the summer. I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back to the Premier League or has more suitors around.
He's not coming to Liverpool, James.
I'd like him at Liverpool. He's a fantastic player.
Let's talk cricket. So I think
I got some more. You got AFCON. Sorry, semi-finals are Wednesday. So yeah, Wednesday afternoon, Channel 4 in the UK.
All right, let's talk a little bit cricket. So I think we've got Big Bash continues at the moment. There's some sort of international series between India, New Zealand, and Sri Lanka, Pakistan. Nothing particularly exciting there. Let's just touch on the Ashes quickly, because obviously, as is inevitable in terms of fallout after the Ashes, so more stories emerge. Obviously, the drinking culture in the English team, not ideal.
You could say that.
I mean, these are professional sportsmen. I mean,
professional sportsmen.
Right, let me rephrase that. These are professional sportsmen in 2025, 2026. Right, this isn't professional sportsmen in 1980.
Yeah, when there was no cameras around and they weren't as professional as they are. Yeah, I mean, as you said, you hear all these stories, and they've obviously, the media know these have happened, obviously, like that, and they've been told by the ECB to keep quiet, and then you can release it after the tours happen, kind of thing. So it started in New Zealand when they basically took that New Zealand ODI series, 3-match series. It's basically a piss up in McCullum's hometown. They went to Queenstown, which is the party place in New Zealand. Then they went up to go and watch his horse race, his horses run. They went to vineyards. They just got pissed basically for 3 weeks. Didn't care.
Sounds like a fun trip.
Getting paid for it as well. Happy days. Probably all expense paid as well. Brooke went out, so you got
a bit of golf in there as well.
Oh, there has to be some golf. I mean, if you can't play golf, you're not playing cricket for England under McCullum. We know that. And then, so it sounds like there were some meetings taking place in New Zealand and at the start of the Ashes tour where Stokes was like, hang on, lads, we need to be a little bit more professional. And it sounds like they just went, who are you, kind of thing. They just didn't take notice of him. And they carried on. And McCullum didn't put his foot down at all. We tried to, and they just carried on. I mean, even in their trip up to Nusra, when they had, they just been talking. They just went on the piss for 6 days. Literally, they didn't do any training, nothing. Didn't even do any fitness at all. The fitness organizer or whoever he is said come for a run, and only 3 of them turned up. Most of them never had nets. They only had one optional net in Sydney, so they just won the force match in Melbourne, which was a lottery, we know, and then they had an optional net session for the Sydney Test match. That's the way they prepare for international cricket. I mean, sorry, but there's no excuse now to keeping McCullum in test matches. Zero excuse. You can't be having that culture. It's not going to change. And I don't want to hear anything about Harry Brook being captain anymore. He should have been sacked as captain as a white ball. Can't be doing that, going out the night before, and then let alone getting punched as well by a bouncer. It's sackable. It would have happened to everyone else. So they've got some big decisions to make after the World Cup in 4 weeks' time, which I think they'll struggle as well.
See, one of the problems I have with it all is the concept of Bazball I like, and I think there's elements to it that I think are really good, right, in terms of putting pressure back on bowlers and these sorts of things. And you see it with Head, right? So Head has been the most influential player in this series probably, and he plays in a not in a Bazball type way, and the impact he's had on that series has obviously been huge. So I do think, you know, Bazball generally I like, but I think, as you say, the problem is you've got to be giving yourself a chance, okay? And it doesn't feel like England are really giving themselves a chance. You know, I don't mind. You know, if players want a few beers here and there, fine. But you know, these are just young lads, and there's no issues with that. I'm not going to sit here and say, "Oh, you can't drink," but
no, but there's a time and place for it.
It has to be vaguely sensible. You know, I remember even like when you're playing, you know, football at a reasonable level, like university and stuff, is you would never drink the night before a game. It was just an unwritten rule. You just wouldn't do it. You might drink every other night, but you wouldn't drink the night before a game. Just some basic stuff.
And the culture's not going to change under the current regime. He said, why should know? It's a nice gig, this. Of course it's a nice gig. You're probably on the best part of £1 million, travelling around, doing very little. And the problem is he's got his coaching. He streamlined his coaches to Jeetan Patel and Marcus Trescothick. Those two aren't going to go back to him and say, we need to do this, we need to do that. It has to change. And I worry it won't change. That's the biggest issue.
It doesn't sound like it's going to change.
No, yeah. And it's not. Yeah.
So one thing, it did make me think. I saw someone ask this question. I have sort of quite strong opinions on this. I'll share them in a minute, but I want you to go first on this. I saw some people rating players in terms of the series as to how they thought they did. So Joe Root obviously averaged 44, I think it was. He scored 440 runs across the 10 innings. And where would, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank his Ashes series? Obviously 200s.
5, 6. It's not the hundreds, right? It's when he made the hundreds. Did he make the hard hundreds? No, he didn't. He made a easy 100 at Sydney on a road, 160. Great. Thumped in that test match. Made a good 100 up in Brisbane, pink ball test match. But didn't do anything in Perth. Did nothing in Adelaide. And Melbourne, obviously, I can kind of put an asterisk next to Melbourne because it was just, we know it's a poor pitch kind of thing. But yeah, Brooke, you can 2 if you want. I can go through. I'll go through Corley 2, Duckett 1, Pope 1. That's being generous on Ollie Pope, by the way.
So, I mean, Root was the one that interested me just because I saw loads of people saying, 7, 8, you know, in terms of, obviously he got 2 big hundreds and he's obviously averaged almost 45 in the series. I have a very different take in that, similar to what you were saying there, is that he only really had one meaningful innings, which was that pink ball 100, and it was important at the time. He failed pretty much every other innings before Sydney, apart from that one innings. England needed him to step up and have a monster series away from home. And, it just sets the tone when you're losing so many wickets. So, the top of that order, he's meant to be the one who will hang around, not play all the shots like your Brooks of the world. And I just thought he had an incredibly average series.
Yeah, 5, 6 out of 10, yeah.
At tops.
Yeah. But others had a shocking series.
I don't doubt that.
The only person who comes out of any credit, bowling-wise, was Josh Tongue. We talked about that on Friday. Came out with a lot of credit. Bryden Carr staying fit, but he needs to bowl a fuller length. Otherwise, bowling at 85 miles an hour back of a length is just cannon fodder at times. You're going to bowl a bad ball every over as well with him. So, yeah. They've got some, we talked about on Friday, they've got some big decisions to make. And I still see people saying that we should keep calling outside.
They will.
Yeah, I know they will.
I mean, we've been talking about Crawley for about 5 years, but and Pope. But there you go. So there was some golf this week actually. So there were some Live qualifiers. So it was quite interesting. So Live have changed their format. So 3 players get the opportunity. I think it's 3 to get a tour card on Live, which is obviously worth quite a lot of money. The big news was it's more than that. It may have been 5. Big news was Anthony Kim got one of those cards. Obviously, been in the wilderness for a long time. Clearly, used to be a very talented player, but he's had a tough time with it recently. So it's quite a nice story for him to retain his playing privileges. And it'd be interesting to see if he can kick on and ever sort of reach similar heights to how he used to be. But what it also highlighted a little bit was just how, the PGA Tour doesn't really do that, the qualifiers anymore. It just feels like a bit of a missed opportunity in terms of that type of thing. It's quite a good event if you have the right sort of personalities and players, and the prizes are big enough. In terms of golf, obviously we've got a little bit of the 2 tours return this week with Sony Open and Dubai. So Rory, Fleetwood, Lowry all appear this week. Rugby, James.
Yeah, going back to football. Going back to golf there quickly, Luke. Sorry. So Brooks Koepka has resigned from Live, wants to go back to the PGA. So there's some chatter that he needs to be almost a year suspension for whatever it is. I'm not up to speed on how it exactly works. I can see them doing a deal for Brooks to come back. And Liv is on TNT this season, starts on the 4th of February from Riyadh. So those are 2 things from the golf. Yeah, rugby, big weekend of Champions Cup rugby and the secondary competition. Yesterday, Sarries beat Toulouse 2014 in some horrible conditions. That's pretty impressive from Saracens. Tom Willis was very good again. Atojo is good again. Considering where Sarries have been in recent weeks, that was fantastic to beat Toulouse. Toulouse now are in danger of not qualifying for the next stage. They will, but they won't get a home draw. They'll be playing away from home. Bordeaux gave Northampton a thumping yesterday, 50 points to 28. The pantomime villain Henry Pollock scored 2 tries, gets booed. His first try, by the way, is sensational. It really is. It's a kick from a fly half over a kick pass, 50-yard kick pass. Pollock's on the wing, catches it, immediately kicks ahead of him, out sprints Damien Penaud, the French record try scorer, beats him under the post, gives it the celebration, scores 2 tries. Yeah, just Bordeaux are the best team they are the best team in Europe, just ahead of Leinster. But yeah, Henry Pollock's a special talent, lads, and you might not like him, but he is very, very good. Leinster scored a last-minute Harry Byrne penalty to beat La Rochelle on Saturday night, which is big for them. Glasgow won again, Leicester won, Quins won, Sale won, and the game of the weekend was Bristol down in Pretoria. 16 try game, 120 points or something. Ridiculous game of rugby on a Loftus Fairfield up in the High Veld there in Pretoria. So yeah,
so
good
European match in South Africa, yeah?
Yeah, the South African teams have been in Europe and European competitions for the last 2 or 3 years. They fly over here or there. There's actually a game that was supposed to be played in Amsterdam yesterday between Ulster and one of the teams because they didn't want to fly back home. They've been playing the domestic games, and that got called off. So Ulster were given a 28-0 victory, 4 tries kind of thing for bonus points. The next round, the last round, is this coming weekend. Yeah, it's a good weekend of rugby.
So let's touch on a proper sport, James. NFL. It was, obviously we've had 5 out of the 6 games. It's been everything that you'd hope for that weekend's games. It's always an amazing weekend, and it really lived up to its billing. Sometimes you get lots of one-sided games and things like that, but it was just brilliant. So a caption came up in the San Fran game at Philly, where in the obviously first 3 games, the team that had been trailing the 2-minute warning had won every game so far, which just gives you an idea as to how close every game was. Philly obviously had a chance to do that as well, but failed to do that. So, those first 4 games, just incredible in terms of the swings. Rams looked poor. They were cruising early on in that game. And in the end, they've needed Stafford to bail them out.
Thoughts about that on Friday? I don't rate the Rams. I really don't.
It doesn't bode well for them, I don't think, going forward.
I thought they'd have a statement win against a poor Panthers team, and they were, they went 14 up when they should have been further ahead, but yeah, scraped over the line. Yeah, worrying signs if you're around sport, in my view.
Probably the best game was probably Green Bay at Chicago. Green Bay were 21-3 up at half time, and even then they also, they were in cruise control in that game. Green Bay had an absolute shocker of a second half. Fair play to Caleb Williams, came up with big play after big play, and the Bears got it done. And I do just love watching the Ben Johnson speeches he does in the locker room after the game. I thought actually Caleb Williams was quite interesting in terms of what he said. He seems quite a reserved individual, and it's quite interesting. Obviously, very highly rated coming out of college, but he seems quite a level-headed type of a guy, which is what you want, really. You don't want these players getting too high, too low, and he gave the impression that he belonged in that sort of moment, which I think bodes well for the Bears going forward.
Yeah, I like that you can see in the change rooms or the locker rooms afterwards now. It gives a little bit back to the fans kind of thing, a little bit what they're talking about and the emotion behind it, rather than just switching off and going straight to another game kind of thing or another sport. It's quite nice to see that in the sanctuary of the dressing room or the locker room.
Buffalo, Jacksonville obviously went back and forth. And then obviously Josh Allen scored with a minute to go. It's quite not contentious, but it's where NFL throws up these interesting situations in terms of clock management. I was surprised that Buffalo scored the touchdown when they did. Jacksonville didn't have any timeouts left.
But Jacksonville let them do it.
Well, no, exactly, because it was in their interest to do it.
Get the ball back, yeah.
In terms of, they got the ball back with a minute to go. So I was a bit surprised that, Buffalo could have potentially been a bit cuter, particularly given that Jacksonville had shown no inclination as to being able to stop Allen from close range. But they gave the ball back, and then there was obviously an interception. But Jacksonville wouldn't have needed much in terms of that final drive to tie that game up. And obviously it it looks like the right decision now, obviously with the interception. But I'll take a lot of convincing it was the right clock management from the Bills in terms of what they did. Particularly when you had Cam Little, probably the longest kicker in the NFL.
It is, isn't it?
Absolutely nuts. I think the key actually was probably the kickoff return that they didn't come back a little bit further. It made it tricky for Jacksonville. And then obviously you had the interception and game over. But it was interesting. And then we had San Fran Philly, again, another ridiculously close game. I mean, fair play to San Fran getting over the line in Philly with Kittle got injured pretty early on, did his Achilles. He's a massive part of this 49ers offense. They're obviously going to miss him. McCaffrey is clearly a special player, always has been. Barkley actually looked good for Philly as well. Just another back and forth game. And honestly, no massive surprise when Hurts came up short, when he had to throw it.
Throwing under pressure, can't deal. It's all well and good when he's confident like that. It was interesting that commentary, actually, watching that game. How I can't remember who was on commentary, the co-coms guy, was basically saying, speed up the play, Eagles. You're allowing them just like reset all the time. And when they did speed it up, they looked a lot better on the offensive side of it. But yeah, it's a brilliant win for San Fran. But yeah, Kittle injury is going to be huge for them this weekend coming up. He's out for the season, isn't he?
Oh, he'll be out of a good chunk of the whole year, to be honest. It'll take him...
is it completely ripped his Achilles, have he?
Yeah, there's quite an interesting internet, I don't know how we sort of theory in terms of, particularly San Francisco, in terms of injuries. Obviously it's one of these things that gets debunked quite a lot, but I mean, when you see Kittle do his Achilles and you see what's happened to so many other players at 49ers, basically it's like a conspiracy theory about the 49ers and their training ground, which is next to I think it's like a power plant type thing. And there's some speculation that there's sort of radiation type thing from that plant that was affecting players in terms of it affects the collagen in your sort of ligaments and stuff. There's just been so many players who have suffered injuries that, I think people are looking for reasons as to why it may have happened. So a lot of the time you just take these things with a pinch of salt. But I saw it a few weeks ago and when you see another player like Kittle go and do his Achilles, they've had injury rate way worse than any other team by a considerable margin. So it's just quite interesting. I don't pay too much heed to these things normally, but it does make you think sometimes. And then last night was Chargers at New England. I do feel sorry for Herbert. That offensive line for Chargers is absolute garbage. You're not even giving him a chance to succeed. And fair play, New England really ended up, obviously, it was a one-score game going into the fourth quarter. And, so again, a close game before New England scored. I do feel a bit sorry for Herbert. But, injuries will do that to offensive lines. And then obviously...
so you got one more game tonight, haven't we?
We've got Houston, Pittsburgh tonight, so that'll be interesting. And then obviously just looking ahead to next week, just quickly, we've got Buffalo at Denver, San Fran at Seattle, Rams at Bears, and then either the winner of Houston, Pittsburgh at New England. So, I mean, some pretty good games, to be honest, as you'd expect.
Yeah. Hope you're on the Seattle train.
Well, I mean, they've got a huge advantage going into the next week now. Yeah. Off a bye, San Fran off a short week, got injuries.
Or travel for San Fran as well.
They beat them a couple of weeks ago when it mattered. Tough to see it. But Just trying to think if there's anything else. I think
there's a couple of things. You got the racing. Had the racing from. It was beset by snow and weather here in the UK and Ireland. You had a good race at Punchestown yesterday. Might have been a clue for the Supreme in March at Cheltenham. A horse called Sober won. Royal Ascot winner won for Townend and Mullins over at Punchestown. You had the Lanzarote Hurdle. Iberico Lord won 22-1 for Nicky Henderson and James Bowen on Saturday. And then at Kempton and then you had Edwin Stone won the Silviano Conti Chase. The 12-year-old won his first race in 2 years. The big unfortunate news coming out of that race was the death of Kafdu Burley, who had a serious injury and had to be put down. Paul Nicholls' stable star, who's won a couple of graded races, grade ones last season, put down. So that's not good news there. And then you had some snooker yesterday. The Masters started yesterday. You had Sean Murphy got beaten and Mark Selby got beaten as well by 2 Chinese debutants. There's 5 Chinese players in the Masters this year. I've actually never heard of the lads they lost to yesterday. One takeaway from that is Steve Davis has mentioned the table again apparently looks bad. So game starting again today. Mark Williams plays Mark Adams this afternoon. But Ronnie O'Sullivan's pulled out of his match against Neil Robertson. So Chris Maitland, the Scottish Open champion, he replaces Ronnie on Wednesday. So if you're watching something on BBC 2, BBC 1 this week, that's on all week. The finals on Sunday. You had some boxing on Saturday night as well. Dalton Smith, new world champion for UK, the 5th, I think, won the WC lightweight champion in the 5th round, knocked out Subriel Mattis with a big right hand. Brilliant performance from him going away there. Was given no chance whatsoever. And Eddie Hearn was talking about homecoming. He's a Sheffield Wednesday fan in the summer. So fair play to him, the current 5th men's world champion. So, yeah.
So one thing we do have, obviously, this week, we have Carabao Cup semi-finals. We obviously have Newcastle, Man City on Tuesday night, Chelsea, Arsenal Wednesday night. I think once you get to this stage in the competition, you end up taking it seriously. I mean, there's been a lot of joke teams put out in the build-up to this sort of, until you get to this round. It's a bit crazy that it's, the last thing these teams need is a 2-legged semi-final. Doesn't make any sense. But it's going to be interesting. I can't imagine the teams putting out anything but full-strength teams. Good luck to Manchester City going up to St James's Park on a Tuesday evening. That crowd will be feral, and it's going to be interesting to see sort of how it plays out, really.
Yeah, Semenyo can play in that tomorrow night. He's not cup tied. They changed the law this season, so even though he played for Bournemouth early in the season, he can play. I'd imagine he'll start as well. Yeah, it did for Arsenal last season at home. They beat them 2-0 comfortably. So, yeah, that'll be a tough game for Man City up there on Tuesday night kind of thing. But, yeah, it will be full-strength size. I'd imagine Donnarumma will be back in goal. There'll be no messing around giving Trafford a game, I don't think, from Pep there. Because the second leg, isn't until 3-4 weeks' time. So, yeah, it'll be goals in that because both teams can't defend. Newcastle have still got a few defensively issues as well. They might struggle to put out half-decent.
Well, Livramento and Botman are back, so a bit.
No, Livramento's out. Said this morning, Eddie Howe said Livramento's hamstring. Yeah, he's gone. So, but Botman also played. Newcastle played 120 minutes on Saturday as well, so that's something to think about as well. Well, we talked about Man City had a off day on Saturday. They did have an off day, they just whatever. But anyway, so yeah, Newcastle might struggle defensively, and it'll be interesting to see who they play in midfield. I'd imagine they go back to the Bruno, Joelinton, Tonali 3 and try and get at that Man City midfield.
One of the keys to that game is how much referees allow Joelinton and co just to kick City players into it next week.
Well, they will do. because they'll try and kick them. And I think we mentioned a couple of weeks ago on this pod about Newcastle and what they do in big games. Eddie Howe basically says to them, you can run around for 60 minutes at full throttle and then try and hang on. So I wonder if he'll go back to that scenario and that tactics and go, right, lads, we'll try and blow them away. Because if they do that and Man City hold on, then the last 30 minutes is going to be hard work because Man City are very good at keeping the ball. And if Newcastle can't run and they've blown themselves out, it could be tie over. But we'll see. I'd imagine they'll go back to it. I wouldn't be surprised with the atmosphere and things like that. Newcastle do go flying in for the first 20-25 minutes at least anyway.
Chelsea Arsenal's obviously interesting. It's Rosenior's first proper game. I mean, we touched on it earlier. I don't think there'll be any huge surprises in terms of that Chelsea lineup. I assume Arteta will go full strength, and I don't know. It's going to be intriguing. I'm not quite sure what I think at this point. I'll just spend a bit of time looking at it later today. But
it'd be interesting to see who Chelsea play up front. And for Palmer, I'd imagine will play off the right, Enzo in the 10, Neto off the left. Do they pay João Pedro or do they pay Liam Delap?
I could see him playing Delap.
Just to give that focal point?
Yeah, I'm not convinced Pedro is a great number 9. You know, I've always said he's better, slightly deeper, sort of linking up the play. But again, it's just weird from Chelsea in terms of as a signing. You know, when you've got your Enzos, you've got Palmers who want to play more in that position. You know, they didn't really need Pedro. I don't know. It was just a bit of a weird signing. He's not, and he looks better, slightly deeper, trying to link play up. He's not an out-and-out striker, I don't think, for me.
Yeah, he's like that Bobby Firmino role, isn't it? 9.5 role, can play up there, but prefers play at the 10. Yeah, they ended up against Saliba and Gabriel. Could be quite entertaining to watch, actually, because Delap doesn't mind putting his elbows out and his things like that and getting involved in some fights.
Him and Gabriel.
Exactly. So it could, one of them will get booked. If they both start, one of them's getting booked because Delap can't help himself and neither can Gabriel. So, and it might help Chelsea because he is a bit of an outlet. He can hold the ball up. He's very young and very raw and very inexperienced. But, if they do come under pressure from Arsenal at times at home, they might just be able to chuck the ball up to him and, he could buy a free kick here or there. And he might give Arsenal something. I think Arsenal prefer to play against Pedro than they will against the two centre-backs.
Well, I think what was interesting is when you saw the matchup between these two teams earlier in the season. I mean, there wasn't huge amounts in it. I still maintain I was amazed at how negative Arsenal were against 10 men after Casado got sent off. But I do wonder with Arsenal. I mean, I'm intrigued to see whether Arteta plays this a little bit coy in terms of, would Arteta take a draw now? I think he would.
100%. 100% he would. Of course he would. He's a negative manager.
And I suspect that Arsenal might be a little bit on the cautious side. Because the other thing you'll find is that Stamford Bridge with new manager, it might be more lively than it is sometimes. They'll be desperate to give him some support, Rosenior.
Particularly exactly, midweek.
Could be an interesting. I think two interesting games, to be honest. But, it's nice not having 10 Premier League games.
Yeah, exactly. You can concentrate on both games. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing Caicedo against Rice because that would be interesting to see the two best Premier League midfielders in their positions, and then Enzo on Zubimendi. I imagine Arsenal will go full strength in that midfield. I think Trossard will play. The only decision for Arsenal is who plays up front, really. They can't play Gyökeres again, surely. Because he's just downright garbage. I mean, Jesus is back. Havertz played yesterday. So I can't imagine Havertz starting. But
it'd be either Gyökeres or Havertz. Not Havertz, Jesus. I think it's a good excuse. I don't know. I think it's a good excuse for them to use Jesus. It's a you can say, oh, cup competition, trying to give everyone a game. Let's give Jesus a chance. Jesus played last season in the Carabao Cup in these sorts of games as well. I remember him scoring. He scored that hat trick against Palace, didn't he? Before he got injured. So I can definitely see Jesus. I can definitely see Jesus start in this particular game. So yeah, but it should be interesting games. But anything else, James?
No, just the snooker continues. Obviously, doesn't we talk briefly about those 2 games, and then Thursday to golf, and that's it. Really, no, pretty quiet week. Weather seems to be improving here in the UK, so all good.
I will apologise if there were any sound issues or any internet issues, but there's not much can do about it. To be honest, don't blame BT or EE now or whoever it belongs with. But all right, James, thank you very much.
Yeah, speak to you soon. Cheers. All right.